Hello, 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 everyone. Happy Tuesday, day before the Fed meeting. How is everyone doing this fine morning? Good morning, Patrick. Good morning, Martinez. Good morning, Jacob. Good morning, Options 22. Good early to the show morning to you too, Richard. Thank you for turning in early. Good morning, Anissa. Hello, Charles. Good morning, Jake the Snake. Good morning to people in the background. No Sterling today. His internet is out. Just giving you a quick update. Got a text from him a little bit ago. Maybe if it comes back, it'll pop in. We'll see. So, one more day before Fed Day. It's not about what they do. They're going to pause, but it's what they're going to say, or what Powell's going to say. Good morning, David. How are you this fine morning? All right. So, market's continuing its pullback. Still going to be on my toes because there's not much coming out today. I mean, we already had a balance of trade exports and imports. Nothing horribly shocking there. Redbook came out, still bouncing from last, still very strong numbers from Redbook. We have the economic optimism index, which isn't going to do diddly squats in the market. So it's all about whether we get anything from the administration regarding tariffs or if the market stays quiet ahead of the Fed. Hello, Daniel. Crude looks cheap. Crude is going to probably trigger unless we get a major sell-off. It was broke out last night above yesterday's high early in the evening, and that was a potential %B buy. So now I just need to follow through with the close. That's what I've been watching with crude. By the way, ISM services from yesterday, I hope you were paying attention to the prices. Look at that. Prices paid big jump in there. So going to be paying attention to that, continue to move forward. Because even though your PCE prices were coming down, we got stuff like the ISM services coming in very hot behind the scenes. And remember, tomorrow is the Fed meeting. Today, going into the office, going into the open. Oh, I don't go into any office. We got Palantir, which did earnings yesterday, which was a beat, but down 8%. All the mega caps down. Stuff pulling back. And besides energy that is bouncing. Energy is bouncing. We'll also show another. I'll go over something else I'm keeping an eye on. Groups. Let's just do a quick refresh here. Energy and basic materials are really only leading. Consumer defensive up 4 basis points, but everything else is lagging, being led lower by technology. The Fed Watch. The Fed Watch tool has a pause priced in for tomorrow and then probably a pause in June. But again, it's going to be 6 more weeks off from the June meeting. So we'll have to see how that plays off. But only 3 rate cuts priced in. Fear and greed. Finally back to greed mode. Finally, we've got back to greed on this bounce, and Schiller PE hanging in at 35. All right. I do not miss my office in Chicago. No, my wife's in Chicago. She's been there for the last week. Oh, it's been rainy and gray. I do not miss the weather there. So that's where we sit. All right. We went through Palantir. Ford was yesterday. This morning, Constellation Energy was interesting. I'll show you why. Remind me to get to that. After the close, we got Supermicro, or I guess it's just called Super now. I don't know. Who knows? AMD, Rivian. Going to be paying close attention to AMD, though. And then tomorrow morning, we got Walt Disney, Uber, but nothing that's really going to be market moving. So, where do we sit? Revised my levels just a little bit. We're getting the pullback, which I'm watching for the pullback. We're closing in on the rotation zone. I'm watching for that. So the key area I'm watching on this continued pullback into the open is between about 56.08 to 55.91. It's sort of a broad area, but that's the area I'm watching today for a continued pullback. On a rotation back up, we have to get above about 56.45 area and sustain above that for any sustainable bounce. Other than that, that would be my key resistance area. And then to really get a move on, we have to get back above 56.62. Those are the two key things I'm watching for. Other than that, if we did get a bigger pullback, where's the major support? If some of the bottom fell out for some reason, not expecting it to, but we're back down by about 55.35 to 55.40. We'll take a look at crude in a second, Jake. Yeah, they did pull guidance, and they had said today they don't expect tariffs to go away for at least 3 years. Yep. So they did pull guidance. So much winning. Okay. Meta technically closed above double bottom. Apex probably higher prices over the coming days. We'll take a look at that too. Do not worry. Do not worry. Okay, for the NASDAQ, the key area I'm watching is still just above this 19,900 area to sustain on any rally. It's got to get above there and sustain, which means it has to test that and then rotate back up. Otherwise, that area is key resistance. We're coming in on the first level key support about 19,780, and then if we fall through there, the major support is 19,660. All right. So that's what I'm looking at there. Not surprised to see these pullbacks. We had so many days up. 9 consecutive higher close days? So not surprised to see a pullback into the rotation zone, especially with cycles rolling over and getting out of overbought conditions. Other than that, if it can sustain above 19,900, the next target for me is 20. It's just above 20K, so 20K. Again, we had a nice boring day today. Dow pulling back into a very key support area between about 40,850 to about 40,950. So that's the area I'm watching on the Dow. Again, giving it sort of a wider range because we have cycles rolling over. On any rally in the Dow, the first key target that we have to sustain above is about 41,130. And then I'd be using the harmonics on the pullback. Russell, again, pulling back, rotation zone. 1982 is looking still like key support. That's all we need to talk about. Major resistance on there is 2025. I'd be looking mostly to the S&P and NASDAQ for any good setups. VIX, again, a slight little bounce. This isn't really due to that much of a sell-off because this is a very slow sell-off. This is due to a little volatility being priced in for the Fed meeting tomorrow. Nothing to talk about there. DAX. The DAX, we are stalling out at the recent highs. Little sell-off there. Could not elect a new chancellor. Other than that, still going to be watching if we base up here for the breakout play. Now, we have been incredibly overbought, and we need this to either consolidate, move sideways, or do a pullback. So I'm watching for some kind of correction. Now, this could do a sideways correction up here, but we're going to be patient on the DAX to the upside. Let's just take a look at the yields. The yields continue to climb a bit, pausing. I'm still watching this 4.38 level, 4.38 to 4.4. Boy, the allergies are bugging me today. Got a lot of tree and grass pollen. Okay, what else we have? Dollar index. Still no trigger on the head and shoulders. Not invalidated yet. The rotation zone is holding. What's interesting enough, if this does not invalidate this pattern, if we rotate up, the rotation zone could finally get out of the way. So, still keeping an eye on that, but there is no setup. We got cycles rolling over, so going to be watching to see if this holds in and does not take out this inverse shoulder low about 98.50. That's the key level I'm paying attention to. Crude. Here was the percent B buy trigger point. It's got to follow through with the close to be official. Otherwise, I would not carry it. Already tacking off the 37.5. I'm watching for a little higher price action into the rotation zone. And this would be one I'd be aggressively raising a stop on. At least getting it to break even. Okay? Because crude is still trying to carve out a bottom. Now, you want to know if it was a 4-hour double bottom? On this move, this is not valid. This little thing was not a double bottom. because it extends beyond the 25% reverse harmonics. So that cannot be a potential double bottom. Now, is that not saying that this peak area, the key area I'd be watching on a continued move up is the 50% harmonic? Because that's my next, after we tap the 8 EMA, if we continue higher, $60 is my key level to watch for. And then I'll be watching to see how it reacts on a pullback. But above here, keep in mind, we're into a clear path move, with the breakdown being around the 75% harmonic. So those are the key levels if crude does keep running higher with cycles still climbing. And it had a divergence pattern down here, by the way. You see higher low in the RSI, lower low in price, and then setting up the percent B. But that is not a 4-hour potential double bottom. Hey, Christoph, how are you? Is the monthly double top on the dollar valid? This, no, do not, oh, sorry. Clicked. No, this is too extended with the base. This is not valid. Too extended sideways. No, it's not. But good, very good question. Very good question. Again, all the questions are good questions. Gold. Again, we had the percent B buy, which was official, so we broke above the high. Again, if you want to know the percent B settings, here they are. Okay, here they are. 5-period percent B Bollinger Band, high-low close divided by 3, 1 standard deviation. There you go. You watch for the buy setups, you watch for it to drop below 0, like here, and then that sets up the potential high bar. On a break above that, it's the front run buy, and then it's got to follow through with the close. And then I told you my next target was 33.97. My first target was 33.59 area, which we took out. We gapped up. We took out that. My next target is 33.97. We've taken that out. Now, what I'm watching is how this closes today. If it closes above there, then I'm watching for the return. My next stop raise would be around 44.34. And then key target area will be 34.72 area. Okay? So that's what I'm watching for. And those are the exact settings. Yen could not hold support right here, breaking below a trend line. So that's why I'm a little cautious. That's why I would not front run anything with the dollar, because the yen's also pulling back. But I want to see how the yen reacts at 142. Euro, we still have a potential head and shoulders top. The rotation zone would be out of the way if this were to trigger, but no rollover yet. The spiders, again, gap down today with the futures pulling back. Super key support areas between 555 and 556. We're trading 558.21. Ahead of that, I'll pay attention to the high bar from the 30th, 556.50. But this is coming into a potential support zone. On a rally back up, we still have we would still have the gap to fill. But first area I'd be watching is yesterday's low, 561.70, then the open, 562.57, then finally the close, 563.50. There's still a fair amount of overhead resistance there. We are coming out overbought, but still a long way to drop, and cycles are rolling over. That's why I'm really paying attention to a potential continued pullback, both in the futures and the spiders and the Qs. Major support for the Qs is coming in at 475.50 to about 476.65 area. Little key thing I'm watching right going in the open is we're down below this low from the May 1st at 480.74. So we're just below that. So that is the first level of key resistance for me. And then we're into gap territory. What else? Bitcoin, looking to see how this reacts at a very key support area. That if that breaks, going to be watching the bottom of the rotation zone about 92,300. What else do we have? I want to show this, then I'll get to some other stuff. CEG reported earnings. was a miss on EPS, but a decent beat on revenue. This also the other day triggered a inverse head and shoulders. It was down pre-market. So I was going to see if it got another pullback today, but now it's bouncing. But this is something if you're looking for an energy play on pullbacks, because we got the rising rotation zone now. Okay, we came back down. This is the monthly chart into the monthly rotation zone. And here's the weekly. We're back above the rotation zone. So I'm keeping an eye on this for continued plays higher. All right? Continued plays higher on that if you're looking for a stock to keep an eye on or do some analysis on. All right? We could easily, and I'm really paying attention to this 62.5 second target of the inverse head and shoulders and the 62.5 on a continued up move, especially if we get above this 50% harmonic. Meta, this was the confirmation bar. Friday triggered, and yesterday was just a little pullback and right to the peak right here and holding. So it's a little gap down again. We still got the rising rotation zone, but this is giving entries for a potential continued long play. This is a completely valid double bottom. You know, and what is the point of invalidation, which is what we should all be asking, because as long as it's not invalidated, it could still be potential, even on a bigger pullback, could be potential bounce plays. 520.33 on a closing basis. So even if this were to fill a gap, which would not be preferable, but even if it were, it could be potential still for bounce plays because it does not invalidate the pattern. But that's where we sit right now. Okay, so I am continuing to watch for higher prices. In Meta, we are very overbought, so would not be surprised to see pullbacks or at least pausing price action. This is not something, from my perspective, we have to rush out and load up the truck on, because again, we could easily get some pullbacks. But that's where we sit. That's where we sit there. Amazon still. Amazon is pulling back. We still have the little mini double top in play and the major double bottom in play, neither of which have triggered. So still keeping an eye on those. What else do we have? We have AMD after the close. AMD after close right now. There's not a fantastic setup right here. On any bounce, I'm going to be paying attention to this rotation zone and seeing if it's trying to carve out a bigger bottoming pattern. Okay, this pullback was not in double territory. So what I'm watching for is to see if we're going to sustain something and carve out a better weekly bottoming pattern up here. But there's no great setup going into earnings for AMD. You're welcome, Options 22. Remember, I want to tell everybody, remember, these are probabilities. You still got to trade. Anything can happen, especially in this market. Okay, so you don't just put all your eggs in one basket. Just a reminder, because probabilities are not guarantees. And let's see, what I'm really watching for overall is the continued pullback in the rotation zone, possibly then a %B buy or a rotation zone setup, and then the bounce. This next bounce, when we get it, is going to be very, very key, because that's going to be the secondary reaction, and that's going to tell us a lot whether this move, remember, we completed the doubles in the NASDAQ, we completed in the spiders, in the Qs. I mean, this is, I'm going to leave it on there because it's not officially hit there. But, you know, this next reaction, if this cannot sustain something, we have technically shifted the probabilities because we've closed above the 62.5 on the weekly and the daily. But I'm going to be really paying a close attention, because we are in very volatile times and there's lots of still market uncertainty, and retail's been lifting the boat on this one. You're welcome, PMG. Tesla still has a little mini. This is not invalidating anything. It still has a mini double top. It's getting out of overbought conditions. It did have a little divergence set up here, but the only thing for me is this potential double top, or it's got to build a base back above the 200 for a bounce play. That is it. Right now, it's in no man's land. So it is still a valid potential double top, or this 200 has been very key resistance. You see also with this high from back in March. Why isn't my line showing up? There we go. That high, we've not been able to really close above it and sustain anything, and it's right in line with the 200. So that is very key. That's got to sustain above for any breakout play. Gold RSI is going to Mars before Elon. Coco, good statement. Coco, are you not an Elon fan? Are you not an Elon fan? Trust me, I'm not either. Oh boy. That's enough said about that. Took me long enough to get my blue check back on X. Don't want to criticize Tesla stock too much. All right. With that, let's just peek at the open. Again, just headed into the Fed meeting, from the bullish side, just don't do anything. Don't do anything silly. Just let this market play out. It was a long run up. You know, I'm just being very, very patient. Very, very patient. This is not a drastic sell-off. It's just a grind down into some key support areas. All right, so just don't do stupid going into the Fed meeting tomorrow. There's times that it's best to, if a great setup comes along, fantastic. But otherwise, don't force anything today or tomorrow morning, please. You're welcome, PMG. Don't force anything. That's my advice. It took me years to learn that because I'm like, I got to do something. Every day I got to do something. No, you don't. There's times that no trade is the best trade. If a trade's, and it might not be in this. I mean, the good trades were, what were the good trades from my perspective? We had the gold, which set up Sunday night, and crude for the bounce play, closing in on that, on the rotation zone. But this is, again, a bounce play only. These are not long-term plays yet. Other than that, I'm being very, very patient. There's too many things in no man's land. You're welcome, Anissa. Well, you'll have your opportunities, PMG. I'm waiting for the setups, though. I'm waiting for the setups, especially in Tesla. What I do is I generally move my stops. I have a two-thing stop. First of all, the initial stop, the technical initial stop is below the %B buy bar, or as in gold. Let me show you gold. Then I got to run. Come on. Let me show you gold. Here you go. See, this was the %B buy bar, but this bar before it was lower. The technical stop was below that. Now, when we hit the first target area, I go and I find a key. First off, I look at break even, but if break even's too close, gold's definitely at break even now. Okay, but crude, let's go back to crude. So here was, let me mark it off. Right at this 25% harmonic, okay? So what I'm looking at is that's the worst case. That's the closest stop I'd want if I wanted to give crude a little more room. It'd be right below this 57 base. Okay, I look at the shorter term charts. There is no magic rule. I look at key support and resistance. If I'd at least move it to break even at this point. Okay, At least move it to break even at this point. If I wanted to get more aggressive and lock in something, and since we're going against the rotation zone, besides when we're going against a rotational zone like this, I like to take something off, at least lock in a little profit, and then raise the stop. Okay? Because we're going into very key resistance and gold's been very weak. But I would leave something on. I do not mind getting stopped out on something trying to play for a little bigger bounce. If it gets if we get a topping pattern on like between the 50 and the 62.5, and that topping pattern's triggered, then I'm out. Other than that, I'll just keep trailing a stop. Because those are very different. I'll give you another reason. Let's say the S&P. Let's just say the S&P. Let's say we dipped in the rotation zone and we set up a percent B buy trade in here. I love percent B buys with the rotation zone. Then I'm going to give it more room. Why? Because we're into the rotation zone. We got a percent B buy. I'm going to keep my stop below the rotation zone and below the lows that set up for longer because I'm going to give it a little more room for the continued bounce play. But when we're against the rotation zone, I am more aggressive raising a stop. I hope that makes sense. Jake. Well, I'm glad, Patrick. Thank you for sharing that. So those are the two ways I look at it. When we've got a percent B buy with the rotation zone, I give it more room because I really want to try to capture as much of that move as possible, and I don't want to get shaken out early. When we're against the rotation zone, I'm more aggressive raising the stop, and I'm more aggressive at least taking some initial profits because we can slam that rotation zone and put a halt to the move. So that's it in a nutshell. All right. We're open. Let's just see where the tick opened today since I'm still here. Let's just take a look. Pretty weak tick opening. Minus 1,200. Wow. Okay. But we're getting a bounce with that. So now I'm going to be watching for the tick to bounce and then the tick to roll over and see if it forms a much higher low in the tick and then seeing what price does. That's what I'll be watching for. And there still may not be a setup. Okay? There still may not be a setup, but we're getting closer to that area I'll start looking at. You're welcome, Jake. All right, everyone. Have a safe and wonderful trading day. Again, patience. Don't do stupid. And, sometimes it's best to keep your powder dry, your capital dry for the best setups. We could get some towards the end of this week. Fed meeting tomorrow, and then we could get some interesting setups. So that's what we need to be patient for. With that, I'll talk to everyone later. I'll see you all tomorrow morning. Thank you for tuning in. Bye for now.